Last week, a CISO at a Fortune 500 company passed this massive SOC2 audit with flying colors.
Always a good feeling.
Oh, absolutely. They
Yeah.
popped the champagne, gave the compliance team a high five,
Right.
went home for the weekend.
Right.
But the very next day, they discovered that their engineering team had quietly built this AI tool that was summarizing live, highly sensitive customer data.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and without a single security review. So suddenly, that pristine, well-oiled security framework, they just got certified. It basically wasn't worth the paper it was printed on.
It's brutal.
Today, we're looking at why traditional security frameworks just absolutely crumble the second AI enters the chat. Welcome to the deep dive.
It really is a brutal reality check for security leaders, and we are seeing this exact scenario play out across the entire industry right now.
Yeah, so our mission today for you listening is to pull apart this massive execution gap. Specifically, we're looking at it through the eyes of a CISO or a security leader.
Right, the folks actually on the hook.
Exactly. We're diving into some excerpts from this great article called From Frameworks to Flow, Closing the AI Execution Gap.
Yeah.
We really want to figure out how to assign real ownership and critically learn how to build AI governance that actually works out there in the wild, not just, sitting in a binder on a shelf.
Which is the core tension here, right? I mean,
Yeah.
every organization has an intention to be secure, but the actual practice of security, especially when you throw artificial intelligence into the mix, is where things get incredibly messy.
Okay, let's unpack this a bit, because the way I'm reading these sources, traditional governance, risk, and compliance, GRC as we call it, is basically like having a gym membership.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah, like having the little plastic card in your wallet,
Yeah.
paying the monthly fee, printing out a workout schedule. That's your documented policy.
Right.
It looks fantastic on paper. You can confidently tell auditors, yes, we belong to the gym. But if you never actually walk in and lift the weights, you aren't getting any stronger. So when the heavy lifting is actually required out in the real world, your muscles are just going to fail.
The problem with that gym membership analogy, though, is that in a corporate environment, the CISO isn't the only one who needs to lift the weights.
Oh, that's fair.
It's more like the CISO bought the gym membership for 500 different developers and data scientists.
Right.
What you're pointing to is that fundamental difference between administrative GRC and operational GRC. An administrative GRC only tells you what the organization intended to do.
Like the workout plan.
Exactly. Operational GRC, the actual sweat, the logging, the block deployments, that shows you what literally happened. And if a security leader only relies on administrative GRC in the AI era, they are completely flying blind.
And it's fascinating how this blindness happens because
Yeah.
AI doesn't usually enter a business with trumpets sounding and a grand formal launch where the CISO is cutting a ribbon.
No, almost never.
It sneaks in. Let's talk about the sauce company anecdote from the source material. Because if you're listening to this and looking at your own internal processes, this is going to sound uncomfortably familiar.
Let's lay out the scenario. So picture a mid-sized sauce company. They provide a platform used by healthcare, financial services, tech clients, heavily regulated stuff.
Right.
From a leadership perspective, their GRC program is absolutely rock solid. They have the SOC2 controls, rigorous vendor assessments, quarterly access reviews.
The paperwork is just flawless.
On paper, they are impenetrable. But over in the product department, a manager decides, hey, it would be incredibly valuable to integrate AI into our customer support ticketing system.
Which makes sense.
Totally. They want to build a feature to automatically summarize long, complex support tickets and suggest response language for their human agents. The business case is undeniably fantastic.
Oh, yeah. It cuts response times in half, boosts customer satisfaction. Any proactive product team is going to want to build that.
Exactly. So a product manager wants to test the idea. They go ask the data science team, who pulls some historical support ticket data.
Real customer data, mind you.
Real data, right.
Yeah.
And they spit up a quick prototype using an open source large language model. Then engineering connects that prototype to a staging environment so the support leaders can just, play around with it.
Just a little test.
Right. The support leaders test it out and the results are phenomenal.
And here's the terrifying part for a CISO. Nobody in that entire chain of events thinks they are doing anything wrong or malicious.
Not a single person. The product team sees a major workflow enhancement. Data science sees a fun weekend experimentation project. Engineering just sees another standard API integration.
Yeah, nobody believes they're bypassing governance.
But then an enterprise client, a massive account, comes along and asks a very standard due diligence question. They ask, can you prove your AI governance before we renew our contract?
Oh, man. The dreaded vendor questionnaire. And the music just abruptly stops.
The CISO gets dragged into the room, and the auditor questions start flying. Was this AI use case formally approved by a risk committee before development?
Nope.
Was the customer data stripped of personally identifiable information before the data scientists used it in the prototype?
Probably not.
Are the model's hallucination limitations documented anywhere? Can we mathematically prove the customer data was safely partitioned during testing?
And the room just goes completely silent because they have zero formal approval trails.
Nothing.
So what does this all mean for the CISO? I mean, if a company has strict policies, how does a massive AI summarization tool just get built without setting off a single alarm bell in the security department?
What's fascinating here is that the reflex is to say the framework failed, but the framework itself was actually fine.
Really?
Yeah. The policy explicitly stated that all system, application, and model changes must be reviewed by security before deployment.
Okay, so the rule was there.
The rule was there. The breakdown was purely a lack of translation. The framework never dictated when that control was triggered in the highly specific context of AI development.
Ah, I see.
It didn't define where the approval happens in the actual day-to-day workflow of a data scientist writing code in a Jupyter notebook.
So the CISO had this, PDF sitting on an intranet site, but absolutely zero visibility or mechanical friction in the actual operations.
Exactly. A 50-page PDF policy doesn't automatically open a Jira ticket. It doesn't physically stop an unapproved deployment in a CI/CD pipeline.
Right.
That translation, taking a high-level requirement and converting it into a forced workflow that engineers actually have to navigate, that is the execution gap.
Okay, so the SaaS company got caught. But surely they had a post-mortem after that enterprise client grilled them. Like when the CISO brought data science and engineering into a conference room, who actually got in trouble?
Well, that's the tricky part.
Because the source points to this massive friction point, the difference between being involved and being accountable.
Yes. Ownership is where the theoretical controls hit a brick wall. And AI makes this infinitely worse because AI governance almost never belongs to just one distinct team.
Too many cooks in the kitchen.
Exactly. You have data science creating the model, engineering deploying it, security reviewing the perimeter, privacy looking at data rights, legal assessing liabilities.
And the business owners demanding the ROI.
Right. When all those teams are merely involved in a Slack channel, it feels like governance is happening. But involvement is not accountability.
Everyone is nodding on the Zoom call, but nobody is actually holding the bag.
Precisely.
I actually want to push back on this for a second, though. If a CISO delegates all these different pieces to engineering and data science and legal, aren't they just passing the buck?
How do you mean?
To me, it sounds like the classic high school group project. Everyone assumes someone else is doing the work, and then the night before the presentation, you realize nobody actually wrote the conclusion.
I get why you'd think that, but that's actually looking at it backwards. The CISO isn't passing the buck. They are installing tripwire.
Tripwires?
Yeah. Accountability isn't about the CISO personally performing every single technical validation task. I mean, they don't have the time or the machine learning expertise for that.
Fair point.
It's about establishing an accountable owner who ensures that a specific control operates. And if it fails, that specific person is on the hook to escalate it.
How does that actually break down mechanically then? Who owns what tripwire?
The source outlines a very pragmatic delegation matrix.
Yeah.
So first, data science. They have to own the technical validation and model performance metrics.
Yeah.
They have to prove the model is mathematically doing what it claims. Then, engineering owns the deployment controls, the infrastructure security, and the system logging.
And the CISO, where do they sit if they aren't checking the math?
Security and the CISO own the threat modeling, the access controls, and the vulnerability management. They are looking at the blast radius if the model gets compromised.
Right, the traditional security stuff.
Meanwhile, privacy or legal must own the review of data use. Did we have the legal right to use this customer data for training?
Huge question right now.
Huge. And finally, the business owner, the product manager who asked for the feature, owns the intended use case and the operational impact.
So it's about making sure someone is legally, formally tagged in the system as the one who raises their hand if their specific piece breaks.
Exactly. Without that forced, documented accountability, governance just fails quietly, evidence evaporates.
Yeah.
An engineer asks a data scientist, "Hey, is this model good to go?" in a direct message. The data scientist replies with a thumbs up emoji, and they deploy it.
A thumbs up emoji as governance.
Wow, it happens every day. No one notices the structural weakness until an auditor demands proof or a data breach forces the question.
Okay, so we've got the owners assigned. Data science knows their job, engineering knows theirs, but if you're the CISO, you can't be standing over their shoulders in the engineering bay every day making sure they actually do the work.
No, definitely not.
You need a system that proves the work is happening naturally.
Which brings us to the concept of automating evidence. And this is where the execution gap is truly closed. You cannot rely on manual evidence collection every time an audit rolls around.
Oh, let's talk about manual evidence collection for a second.
Yeah.
Because the way a lot of companies do it now is basically like doing your taxes with a shoebox full of crumpled receipts at 11:59 p.m. on April 14th.
That is the perfect way to describe it.
The auditor asks for proof of validation, and suddenly 20 engineers are frantically searching through 2 years in emails, taking screenshots of Slack conversations, and trying to paste it all into a Word document. It is a massive, exhausting audit fire drill.
It completely burns out your engineering teams. And honestly, it provides incredibly weak assurance to the regulators.
Yeah.
You're just proving that you could scramble and find a screenshot, not that a systematic control was actually in place.
But automated workflows, which is what the source is heavily advocating for, changes the mechanism entirely. Here's where it gets really interesting. It's like having your taxes automatically deducted from every single paycheck.
Yes.
The proof is generated exactly as the work happens. You don't have to scramble because the system already did the accounting.
The goal is to fundamentally shift the audit conversation from "let me go find that evidence" to "here's the evidence the process already automatically captured."
I love that.
And you achieve this by embedding GRC directly into the systems technical teams are already living in every day. You absolutely do not create a separate, disconnected compliance portal that engineers have to log into.
Because they just won't use it.
That guarantees failure. You embed the controls into Jira, ServiceNow, GitLab, or whatever CI/CD pipeline they use.
What does that actually look like in practice, though?
Yeah.
How does an embedded control physically stop a bad deployment?
Here's a concrete example.
Yeah.
The most effective CISOs right now aren't just writing AI policies. They are writing AI code that blocks deployments without validation tags.
Okay, walk me through that.
Imagine a data scientist tries to push code to a repository in GitLab. The pipeline automatically scans the code, recognizes that a large language model library is being imported, and immediately checks if there is a linked, approved, legal review Jira ticket associated with that specific build.
Oh, and if the data scientist tried to skip the legal review to save time?
The pipeline physically breaks the build. It prevents the merge.
That's amazing.
The code cannot go to production, and the system automatically generates a notification to the security team. That is an automated tripwire.
So it's impossible to bypass.
Right. When the auditor comes knocking 6 months later, you don't show them a screenshot of a Slack thumbs up. You show them the cryptographic log in GitLab proving that every single AI deployment was gated by an approved Jira ticket.
That is brilliant. So if you're listening to this and looking at your own Jira boards or GitHub repositories, ask yourself, could a developer push an AI model right now without triggering an automated check? Because if the answer is yes, you have an execution gap.
And it's not just about making the auditors happy either. By automating this evidence flow, the CISO gets a continuous, real-time dashboard of decision-making insight.
Oh, right. They can see the bottlenecks.
Exactly. They can see exactly where deployments are structurally delayed, where exception requests are piling up, and where the governance process is creating unnecessary friction for the business. It turns GRC from an annual chore into continuous operational intelligence.
So the workflow is built, the shoebox full of receipts is gone, the evidence is automated, the AI support feature is fully deployed. The SaaS company is thrilled.
Success story.
Right. And if this were a traditional software update, we'd wrap up the deep dive right here. But AI isn't traditional software.
Not at all.
The source makes it emphatically clear. The real governance challenge for a CISO starts the literal second the model goes live.
This is perhaps the most difficult mindset shift for a security leader accustomed to traditional IT. AI requires persistent lifecycle thinking.
Because it's not set it and forget it.
Exactly. A static piece of software largely stays exactly the same unless a developer updates the code. But an AI model is inextricably linked to its environment. A model that is perfectly safe, tested, and compliant at launch can become a massive, unmitigated liability 3 months later.
Because it's constantly learning and ingesting new things from the users, right? Like it updates itself.
Actually, I need to correct that because it's a very common misconception that trips up security teams.
Oh, really?
Yeah, for most deployed inference models, the model itself isn't continuously learning or changing its underlying neural weights on the fly. The model is static. The problem is that the world is changing around it. We call this data drift or concept drift.
Oh, interesting. So the code doesn't change, but the reality does.
Exactly. Think of deploying an AI model like hiring a brilliant encyclopedic employee who is locked in a room and never allowed to read the news. On day one, their advice is genius because they were trained on everything up to yesterday. 6 months later, the macroeconomic market has completely shifted. The company has released 3 new products and customer sentiment has changed.
But they don't know any of that.
Right. This brilliant employee is still giving clients advice based on January's reality. The model didn't break, its relevance degraded.
So how exactly does a security leader, who might not be a machine learning engineer, monitor for that kind of degradation? What are they actually looking for on a random Tuesday afternoon?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the CISO isn't jumping into the back end to check mathematical drift metrics.
Oh, thank goodness.
Right, data science handles that. The CISO is looking at business-level operational indicators. The source provides highly specific metrics that act as alarm bells. For example, tracking the frequency of support agent overrides.
Overrides, like the human stepping in.
Yes. If the AI suggests a response to a customer and the human agent has to manually delete it and rewrite it 60% of the time, that is a massive screaming alarm bell for model drift. Wow.
Okay.
The AI is no longer matching the current business reality. You also track things like sudden spikes in customer complaints related to automated responses, or how often the AI hallucinates inappropriate language.
That makes total sense. You're looking at the human behavior surrounding the AI to tell you if the AI is quietly breaking.
Exactly. It takes the concept of governance out of the theoretical realm and anchors it to observable business impact. If agent overrides spike, the automated system flags it, the CISO and the business owner are alerted, and they know they need to pull the data science team back in to potentially retrain the model on fresh data.
The life cycle just loops right back on itself. It never actually ends.
It never ends. That is the reality of operational AI governance. A one-time deployment approval is essentially meaningless if you aren't monitoring how the model interacts with a changing world.
All right, this has been an incredibly eye-opening journey into the actual mechanics of security. Let's bring it all together for you listening.
Sounds good.
Moving from that administrative GRC, the gym membership card, to operational GRC, the actual heavy lifting, requires 3 core shifts. First, defining minimum viable workflows so teams know exactly what is required.
Right.
Second, clearly separating accountability from involvement by installing specific tripwires for data science, engineering, security, and legal. And third, designing systems in your CI/CD pipelines that naturally generate cryptographic evidence, rather than relying on an exhausting audit fire drill.
And this matters profoundly, whether you are a CISO, a developer writing the code, or a business leader demanding the feature. Because in the AI era, true business resilience and customer trust are not proven by what is written down in a static PDF. They are proven by the automated controls that actually hold up when the business is moving at lightning speed.
You can't fake the heavy lifting when the weight is actually on the bar.
You certainly can't. And I want to leave you with a final thought to really mull over, something that pushes past the source material entirely.
Let's hear it.
If we are moving toward a world where governance is entirely embedded into the code, where GitLab pipelines are automatically enforcing legal reviews and risk scores, does the traditional role of the CISO even exist in 5 or 10 years? Or does security simply dissolve into being a highly specialized sub-department of engineering?
Wow. Now that is a disruptive question to end on. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep looking at the mechanics behind the policies, and we'll see you then.